Hello, this is National Chess Master Rats at chess.com, continuing my video series on the correspondence team match played between my video lessons group and the team CARPE DIEM. These two games were played on board 31 of 210 boards. Our man is Caiello versus Simone 070792, rating advantage about low 2000s versus mid 1900s. And one thing, when I first got into correspondence chess way back 1980, that they were always talking about was the way to win games was in the ending in correspondence chess. Not only could you learn a lot, you could sit there and dissect these end games and find the proper strategy. And in both cases, Simone goes wrong in the ending and turns very likely draws into losses. And no discredit to Caiello, he found the way to break through, but let's have a look at the games and we'll see what happens. Okay, so the first game we have the Alekhine defense, and White plays I guess they call this the exchange variation. The move I'm more commonly familiar with is to take this way. It leads to a strategic imbalance in the pawn structure right away. There's certainly nothing wrong with this capture. I've never really studied it, but let's have a look and see how it plays out. Okay, and one of the ideas of the Alekhine defense is Black is inviting White to push the pawns forward, and Black will seek to occupy the weak squares that those pawn pushes leave behind. And White tries to say, well, okay, I'll make a few weaknesses, but I'm going to have a space advantage. So let's see how it plays out. Now F4 is still booked, but let's look at one possible drawback with the White system so far. And here I'll point it out to it. This bishop is shut in, and this bishop is shut in. So White doesn't get a whole lot of mobility for his bishops, at least in this line. And Black has, well, he can maybe occupy the c5 square, but White may contest it. F5 looks like an inviting square. It would invite weaknesses to evict from that. E4 and D4, you know, those squares are weak. E3 is weak. D3 is weak. Whereas Black's structure, you know, what's weak in his position? Really nothing. So anyway, let's see how it plays out. And both sides continue their development. And now, to me, the logical move for Black to play right here is just castle and have it done with. He doesn't do that, and it leads to a quick queen exchange. And normally, you don't want to trade queens too early, as if you're playing for a win. The reason is the absence of the queen means that you're not going to probably not going to get a mating attack. Okay, although games without the queens can still be full of poison, and there's plenty of potential. But with this pawn structures, it is symmetrical. I'm thinking the game is staying close to even. And Black obliges and says, okay, let's trade queens. And off they come. And now White, again, is trying to create space and grab space with A4. Is this right? Well, first thing I look at, and I always want people to look at, whenever you move a pawn, don't look at not only what it can do, what it can't do or can no longer do. Now, controls B5, but White already had some pressure on that square. It may be threatening to evict this knight, but is that all really that good? But it left a gaping hole on B4 and B3, okay? Black counters and says, well, okay, fine, you can have B5 if you already had it, but I'm going to take B4. Well, at least right now, Black's not planning to get there, but this does immobilize to a large degree those White queenside pawns. And for the moment, Black is the one with a potential break. Okay, so White comes in, threatens a fork, and Black forgoes castling and guards that pawn. This is one of the drawbacks of the queenside castling. I mean, not a queenside castling, of trading the queens. The c7 square was left unprotected. And now White wants to break this pin, wants to advance the b pawn, and rather than put the rook on b1, figures I'll put it on a2, and if later I play b3, the rook can come into play this way, okay, somewhere along that file. I mean that rank, okay. And earlier I was talking about black had the f5 square, and there it is. And soon white is going to evict black from there, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so the game looks pretty level. Black goes ahead and tries to chase white out of that square. And here I think white commits a mistake. Probably should think about maybe taking this pawn first, just to give black a backward pawn on the open file and isolate this pawn on e5, then just safely drop the knight back to a3. But instead, white tries a little combination here. He says, okay, you take me, I'll take you back. Okay, that's what happens. But this costs white a pawn. And also, white has a pair of double pawns. So I don't know why one would willingly go into this and just go ahead and give up a pawn like that. But black's going to oblige white here in just a moment, return the favor with an inaccuracy. And here it comes in just a moment. But let's evaluate this position just for a moment. Okay, kingside pawns are equal, but white has all isolated double pawns, so they're all weak. White's other pawns on the queen side are isolated and weak. Black's kingside pawns are perfect, but they're not really doing anything now, except sitting there waiting. And the black pawns are not really doing much. The pawn on two of them are blockaded, and the pawn on b7, which is the extra pawn, is backward on the open file. So probably the best move to play from a strategic point of view right here for black is to play knight b6. And the reason you want to do this is you're menacing two pawns. And if white seeks counterplay by counterattacking the knight, well, black's going to get a protected pass pawn. How does black counterattack or white counterattack that knight? Well, he can't do it with the rook. Let's try it this way. Well, which pawn do you want to take? You want to take this one, or do you want to take the one on a5? This move puts white in a little bit of a quandary as to how to proceed. I think it's just safe and solid. And if rook c7, go ahead and take this pawn. Here, I'll give you an example. Bring it down, take this pawn, and there's that c5 square we were talking about earlier with tempo on the rook, and black has a pawn that's itching to run up the board. And I think black would have found this very much in his favor, and it makes white really hunker down and find a plan. But what black does is ends up making a strategic error where the black rook, the white rooks come into play, and we'll see what I mean. Nope, he didn't play there. He played knight e3, and then that makes white part with the bishop. And this is okay for white because now there's some pressure on f7, and if the king comes up to e7, there's suddenly this check, and if the king goes to e8 to guard it, I think once again white can get some counterplay with moves like rook c7. So black opts to get rid of that, which uncripples the black kingside pawn or white kingside pawns, and I think to a large degree black's advantage is dissipated because, as I was saying, the white rooks spring to life. They become very, very active. Now this rook is threatening to take down here on b7, and it'd be a very powerful rook for white to have. This causes black to come behind his pawn to protect it. Now earlier we had variations where this pawn was on a4 was falling off the board, and the rook was perfectly posted on a8, getting ready to run that pawn up the board. Now this rook has become a very passive rook. It's true. These pawns are under heat, but white can afford to let one of those go if need be. But first he stops and gains a tempo, protecting one pawn, attacking another, and it looks like white's doing okay here. And with correct play, should probably hold a draw because black doesn't really have any activity. And black slowly works his way through here, picks up this pawn with check. Now black is, for the moment, 2 pawns up, but white has active rooks, and that makes all the difference here. And even though the black rook is now loose, white's doing fine here. Okay, now black is 3 pawns ahead, but not going to be for long. And now he's only 1 pawn up. And suddenly white has won back 2 of the pawns. And here's where I think white misses his chance for the draw. Just come up to e5 and try to help support this pawn. How does white make progress, or black make progress here? He may have to just check that king out of there, repeat the position or something, because it gets awful dangerous here for white. This rook will let's see, where was that rook? See, we can do the check first, and or we can, with the pawn, or we can do this check, and suddenly, like for instance here, white's threatening a mate, as well as collecting these pawns. I'm not saying white's going to win this, but if black has an accident, hey, white just might. And even if black finds a defense, and there should be one, I don't think white should lose this. So just rook check. Rook check. Now let's see, if you try king e8, you can still threaten a mate. See, this is still a mate because the f7 pawn's in the way. And this pawn on a5, which is passed, is blockaded. You want your rook behind your pawn, not in front of your pawn. White's in great position to draw this. But instead, white comes this way, which loses a critical tempo, as we will see. Now black has time to collect that pawn. Now the king tries to hustle back over. But here was the last chance. Need to play king e5 and go back to threatening these things again. And I still think with correct play, white can draw this. But he's going to have his work cut out, or she's going to have her work cut out. Let's see. So this allows the black king up, which makes all the difference here in just a moment. Black is going to regain, or white's going to retain material equality, but king position is the determining factor here. And now black will clearly win. There's really nothing white can do. If you put the rook behind the pawn, the natural move going behind it, that pawn will just advance, and there's no way to shield the white king from a check, allowing the pawn to promote. So there's really no good move coming. And here, this just allows the king into the game, and this king will come over, and black has a theoretically one ending. So backing it up just slightly, when the rook check came, which was the last fatal error. Okay, see, once again you go into these lines. If a4, here comes this check, and counterplay. Okay. What's black going to do? You have to block the mate. Well, hey, look at this. Let's get this going. Well, we have time to grab another. Let's get it going. And now we're going to come behind the pawn. And it seems to me that white will hold a draw here. See, there's no exit check to promote this pawn. You can try to bring the king up the board, but white's getting some play here. So let's bring the king up the board. Hey, look at that pawn run. Okay, now no rush to take on a2, although it should work. Let's do it this way. And there's your draw. The pawn will queen, or black can keep checking until he realizes that it's nothing more than a draw. That was the drawing line. And so there's your fine line of why games can be won in the ending. In correspondence chess, you got to take your time. You've got to look up the resources, and you definitely have to analyze it. Overall, the game was very well played, but a couple critical errors left to a position that was going to be hopeless. Okay, so let's bring up the other game, and Always wonder what move number it's going to start it at. Lately it's been starting at move 1. Nope. 22. How does it pick that? My goodness. Okay. Here, I think black ends up with the better of this game and then goes wrong late middle game, early ending, and we'll see why when we get there. White temporarily picks up a pawn, but black will regain it. Okay. Now white has some double pawns, and there's the regain. You can't take on e5 because of the pin. And so here the queens come off the board rather quickly. So after, there really wasn't much happening in those 17 moves because I kind of went through it really quick. Neither side really gained anything. But let's stop and evaluate this for a moment. Okay. It's black's move, and black has a loose pawn on e7. So that needs to be dealt with. How would you deal with it? Okay. The natural move is what black plays, but I don't think it's the right move. And we'll see why in a moment. Okay, let's evaluate this. With the bishops on the board, having a pawn on a dark square is not good. So that's one reason for playing this move. Okay. But at the same time, white also has some double pawns that he's not getting rid of. Okay? I believe the proper move to play here for black is f6. And this is critical. Even though it rids white of this weak pawn, even though it closes down this diagonal, it gains a critical tempo on this bishop. Because if white doesn't exchange now, he's going to have to move the bishop now. Okay? One or the other. Move it now or move it later. Let's go ahead and take. Okay, now this bishop needs to move. Okay, where are you going to put it? I don't know. Let's put it on h4. Let's keep pressure on f6, just because we can. Well, the difference now is black is able to contest the open open file, and nothing white can do about it. If you double up rooks, black will just play something like king f7 and dare white to go into an ending where black has all the winning chances because of the white double pawns, right? I mean, it makes sense. Now, with proper play, it should be a draw, but with proper play, the game at move 1 should be a draw. Okay, so you got to take what you can get, and black did well, equalized the game, got a slight plus, but shouldn't have lost this game. So it comes from an unwillingness to part with the fact that this pawn is a target. Black doesn't want to give up the fact that this is a target. But you see, by playing e6, the whole difference is this bishop is not menaced and it's white's turn, and white can now get on an open file. And that's exactly what white does. And now black can't contest that open file because the bishop is controlling d8. So objectively, the game's still even, but white's actually a little better now simply because white's better developed. The works are better. White's threatening to put a rook on the 7th rank. So black went from a very slight advantage to a slight disadvantage. Okay, black chooses to activate on this rank, but here comes the 7th rank, or file, here comes the 7th rank occupation. And counterattacks the e5 pawn. Now he's willing to eliminate it, but should have eliminated it before the white rooks got active. Okay, so now white's just bagged a clear pawn, and nothing black can do about it. White gets to play this for a win, and white stands better. And black didn't have to suffer this fate. Now comes f6, but a little too late. Comes in after a pawn has been lost. And now white's not being tempoed on g5 and figures, well, I'll just let black take here. It's a weak pawn. I can do my thing over here and get my pawns rolling where I have a pawn majority. And that's what happens. Here come the pawns. And, even though white still has these weak kingside pawns, black is doing absolutely nothing about it. He's not positioned to, or she's not positioned to, rather. And now the pawn on a7 is a horrible weakness, and it's going to be lost. And that means the game. Okay, so there it goes. Now white has two connected passed pawns. And those pawns are getting dangerous. And after bishop e3, the threat is to move the pawn up to be a queen, and there's really not much black can do about it, especially since black is going to lose this pawn on g5. The king has to step closer, either c7 or c8. And just take it. And if king b6, just check. And the king can't take, or this pawn will promote. So the king has to come back, and gosh, white can win this almost any way he chooses. Bring the king up. That looks good. Bring the king up, and if bishop d6, to keep the king out of e5, you just play bishop f4 and force and force the bishops off, and easy win. Anyway, well played for the most part. Just a few critical errors in there that made the difference between a draw and a loss. And I want to thank everyone for their time for watching the video. I'll be back with another one as soon as I can. Take care.